Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Tommy Trials. Thomas here. Sorry, long time no follow-up video for Shadow of War. Who is Helm Hammerhand? I actually got a ear infection, which is more commonly referred to as swimmer's ear. Not from swimming. I don't know how I got it, but it's essentially an ear infection in the outer ear, which makes the entire side of your face hurt, um, and a inflammation in my throat and my nose and everywhere else. So I'm not quite up to snuff, but I'm better. And so we are hopping back in here. Right before we get started though, thank you so much for the 9,000 plus views that the Who is Helm Hammerhand video has gotten as of this point, as well as we hit 200 subscribers. I've been sick. The videos I've been posting have been pre-recorded before I hit 200. I'm going to make a 200 subscriber video, but we will touch on that. Real quick before we get started, though, there is an awesome feature in YouTube called subscribing. So if you're brand new to YouTube, I doubt it, there's a subscription button. You can click on that, and anytime we post something new here in the Tommy Trials, you will be notified. It'll pop up in your feed, which is pretty awesome. But in all seriousness, for everyone who's been using YouTube, if you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and click on that because we're going to be having more Who Is videos explaining who characters are in the actual lore and then what it appears is going to happen in Shadow of War, as well as a lot of Shadow of War content once the game is released. The Road to Shadow of War series is almost done. There's over 20 videos in that, which you can go check out. Link to that playlist will be at the end of this video, in the video, as well as a link to the Who is Helm Hammerhand video, and then a link to my XCOM 2 War of the Chosen playthrough as well. So go ahead and check those out after this video. Go ahead and click on the subscription button, the subscribe button. I can't talk today, and I am sorry. But without further ado, it was revealed along with Helm Hammerhand, they named two other Nazgul, and I'm hoping they stop revealing things because, for one, sometimes their reveals make people unhappy, and for two, we can all go back and look at their marketing team and see what they did with Shadow of Mordor. So spoilers for Shadow of Mordor. If you haven't played it, go play it. And then come back and watch this video. I'll see you in about 12 hours. Alright, you gone? Cool. So in Shadow of Mordor, it is revealed that the Wraith that you are with, his name is Celebrimbor. He forged the Rings of Power. And the first few hours of the game treats that as a mystery. But here's the problem. They made a trailer about it before the game came out, revealing it. So if you watched any of the pre-release hype and watched the videos and whatnot, you already knew who the Wraith was and what he did. So I mean, if you just knew his name was Celebrimbor and you didn't know the lore, you'd still be fine. I mean, the lore people would be disappointed to have learned who it was, and it was not incredibly difficult to figure out who it was because it was an elf with a crown and things of that nature. So some actual people guessed that it was him to begin with. So I am desperately hoping that they stop revealing things, just show a few more Nemesis system stuff, and leave the story alone. They probably won't, but I hope that, they stop. But no seriousness, this video, the reason you clicked on it, is about Isildur, the reveal that Isildur is going to be one of the 9 Nazgul in the game. So just like Helm Hammerhand, it does not fit within the timeline of Tolkien for Isildur to be a Nazgul. Having said that, obviously Shadow of War doesn't give two hoots about the actual timeline of Tolkien's work. So we can kind of crumple that up and throw it out the window at this point because they've already, in Shadow of Mordor, they broke the timeline, but in Shadow of War, they're continuing that trend. So they have revealed that Isildur is going to be one of the Nazgul. So the real question is, what is Isildur's actual story? So we know that he's going to become a Nazgul in Shadow of Mordor, and that's fine. It's really, right before we touch on who he is, it is important to look at Shadow of War as a what-if scenario. an alternate timeline to the actual Tolkien timeline. So you've got the books timeline, you've got the movies timeline, and then you've got your Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War timeline. As much as I'd love them to all take place in the same timeline, they do not. Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, they're going to have their own lovely timeline that's going to be very Elseworlds-ish. So if you're not a DC fan, or you don't read comics, or you just have a lot of things to do and you can't sit down and read about it, the Elseworlds comics in DC are essentially taking the characters and the basis of who they are and plopping them in different timelines where they don't belong, which sounds very familiar with what they're doing with Helm Hammerhand. They're taking the character, plopping him way out of where he belongs, and it still works. And I really think that, like I said, Helm Hammerhand's going to be a great Nazgul, and so is Isildur. But one in particular, they're actually making a cartoon movie about it now. It's Gotham by Gaslight or Batman by Gaslight or something like that. And essentially they take Batman and all the other characters that exist in his universe and they throw them into Victorian England, which is just lovely. It's very, very cool. It's steampunkish, which is always awesome. But they don't claim that that is actually, the actual Batman story, because it's not. Batman takes place in mostly modern day. The actual Batman story, the original Batman story. So it's probably a good idea. If you're a Tolkien purist, or you know a lot about the lore, don't look at this and try to find the flaws. Now I'm going to let you know how it actually works in the Tolkien timeline, because that's why you clicked on this video, and that's what we like to do here at the Tommy Trials, let you know how it actually happened, so you can compare that to what will happen in the game. Which is, for me, quite enjoyable, because I don't know what's going to happen in the game, because they're not following the timeline. And if they follow the timeline, you'd be like, oh, Isildur gets shot. So, it's yuck. But look at it as a what-if scenario. What if a random guy gets killed when Sauron moves back to Mordor? And what if he's bound with a wraith? And what if Sauron doesn't actually return to Mordor until after the events of The Hobbit? And what if Minas Ithil actually stands until Sauron returns, and a little bit after, actually? And what if there's this and that and the other thing, and all kinds of oodles of things that happen in the game are big, fat what-ifs. It's an alternate timeline where the significant events happen the same. So the events of The Hobbit take place, probably the movies. The events of the Lord of the Rings movies take place in this alternate universe. We know that to be true. Eregion is deceived by Sauron. Sauron deceives Celebrimbor into making the rings. That stayed the same. Everything else is really up for grabs. It's that's the only things that we have when we look at the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War events and the timeline that it's creating for itself. That's the only things that we kind of know for certain, is that will happen. But Isildur was a Dunedain king of Gondor. In 3319 of the Second Age, Isildur, his brother Anarion, his father Elendil, and their followers escaped from the downfall of Numenor. In Middle-earth, Isildur and Anarion built Peligir, Minas Ithil, Minas Arnor, and Osgiliath, which is really a killer. If Isildur still built Minas Ithil, and then he's just bent to the will of Sauron now, coming and helping destroy Minas Ithil, which he helped build, that's really, really cool. It doesn't work in the actual timeline, but that's okay. We're going to go with the Shadow of War timeline. As Lord of Ithilien, Elendil lived in Minas Ithil until 3429, when Sauron seized the city. He fled to his father's northern kingdom of Arnor, leaving his brother to defend the rest of Gondor. He returned in 3434 with the last alliance of elves and men, which destroyed Sauron's army at the Battle of Dagorlad. However, both his father and brother had died in the conflict. In 3441, Isildur finally overcame Sauron by cutting the One Ring from his hand. We've seen that in the movies. We're going to see it in the game too. After the victory, Isildur succumbed to the power of the One Ring by refusing to destroy it. We saw that in the movies. 2 years later, Isildur was ambushed by a horde of orcs in the Gladden Fields. He attempted to escape by using the One Ring's power of invisibility to hide him as he swam across the river. However, the One Ring slipped from his finger in the water, and the orcs killed him. The One Ring betrays Isildur, actually, because it wants to get back to its master, and anybody else will not be allowed to use the power of the One Ring, because it will always go back to Sauron. We see that in the Celebrimbor Bright Lord DLC. Actually, the One Ring just slips off of Celebrimbor's finger, and right onto Sauron's, and then Sauron beats the poo out of him. That's actually how Isildur goes, and that's how he dies. He defeats Sauron, and he dies. Now, how do the Nazgul work? I think it's important when you're looking at the lore and trying to understand the lore, you do need to know how the Nazgul work. So, according to Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, the Nazgul arose as Sauron's most powerful servants in the Second Age of Middle-earth. They wore the rings long enough. They received the rings before Sauron revealed himself. So the 9 men received their rings in the Second Age. All 9 of them. And they never die afterwards. Not in the lore. Now maybe in the Shadow of War timeline we're going to get to see something very interesting where maybe some of the Nazgul die and Sauron needs new ones. And that's how he's able to get in and get some people out of the Third Age where they don't belong. Maybe. I don't know. But that's a possibility. I saw that theory in the comments of the Helm Hammerhand video, and it's not really a bad theory to think about when you're thinking maybe, just maybe, some of the Nazgul got killed. But in the actual story, the Tolkien universe, the Tolkien timeline, the official timeline of everything, which is the books and the Silmarillion and the appendices and everything else, the Nazgul wore their rings so long that their physical forms faded away until they had become entirely invisible to mortal eyes. Their black robes gave them visible form. During the assault on Minas Tirith, the leader of the 9, the Witch King of Angmar, cast back his hood to reveal a crown that he had created when he ruled Angmar, actually. But the head that wore it was invisible. Only 2 of the Nazgul are ever named in any of Tolkien's works. Only 2, which leaves the other 7 up for grabs. And we've gotten to see who 3 of them are going to be. Monolith has already said that they're going to name all 9. I assume that the 2 that are named in the lore are going to get to keep their name. We already know the Witch King's in there, which just leaves the one other that's named. And that's Khamul, the Black Easterling, or the Shadow of the East. In the text of the Lord of the Rings, after the fall of the Lord of the Nazgul, which he's killed by Eowyn and Merry, command of Mordor's army in the field falls to Gothmog. Nothing else is said of Gothmog, but since Minas Morgul was closely associated with the Nazgul, some have speculated that Gothmog was one of the Nazgul. That is interesting. Now that's not... I am reading a speculation at the moment. That is very interesting. Gothmog was an orc. He was not a Nazgul ever. But that is a theory out there. So we might see Gothmog being one of the Nazgul in Shadow of War. Just a little heads up. That might happen. So even then, sometimes speculation gets out, and that was a speculation that I read before. I forgot about it, but some do speculate that Gothmog was a Nazgul. Now in the books that would make sense. In the movies, definitely not. He was an orc. In the books, ultimately it is said that he's an orc. But you know, who knows? With a speculation like that that's out there, it's possible we might see Gothmog in Shadow of War. I certainly hope not. Nonetheless, the Nazgul first appeared around the Second Age 2251, some 700 years or so after the rings were forged, and they were soon established as Sauron's principal servants. Now, they were dispersed after the first overthrow of Sauron in the Second Age at the hands of the last alliance of the elves and men, but their survival was assured because the One Ring survived. They re-emerged around the Third Age in the year 1300, when the Witch King led Sauron's forces against the successor kingdoms of Arnor, Rudar, Cardolan, and Arthedain. He effectively destroyed those kingdoms, and then Gondor and the elves rose up and defeated the Witch King, and he disappeared. He was never killed. Um, so that's how the story actually goes. So here's how it works. The 9 kings of men were given rings. They were deceived. They were told, this will just give you great power. They were tricked. And they used those rings for what they were told they could use them for great power. When the One Ring was created, Sauron was able to then use those rings, which had corrupted the men at that point. And the men no longer had a free will. Their will was tied to the One Ring. And that means their will was completely gone, and they effectively obeyed the will of Sauron. They wore the rings, like I said, so long that their physical bodies disappeared, and they appear for the first time as ring wraiths in the Second Age. They don't die until the end of the Third Age, when the ring is destroyed by Frodo. That's how their lives actually work. Now, I am very, very keen to see how Monolith is going to approach this. To give an alternate story of the Nazgul. I'm very, very interested in it. But really, I also want to know what your thoughts are. Do you think we're going to see a Gothmog Nazgul? I certainly hope not, because in my mind, he's definitely an orc, and I really hope that Monolith doesn't go with that theory. But do you think we'll see a Gothmog? Do you think Khamûl will actually make an appearance? What are your thoughts? It was very fun to read the thoughts that was on the last video, and I'm very keen to see what your guys' thoughts are on this video as well. Go ahead and plop a like on this video if you appreciate the information, if you appreciate the work and effort it does take to do the research, which I do for you guys. No problem there. I love doing it. I do enjoy it. And plop a like on there if you enjoy anything good in life. You like Lord of the Rings? Like the video. You like Shadow of Mordor? Like the video. You like Shadow of War? Like the video. You like liking videos? Like the video. Make you feel better. I swear it will. It's awesome. And heck, if it doesn't make you feel better, it's free, so who cares? Like the video. But without any further ado there, hopefully popping up on your screen now in the lower right hand corner is the option to subscribe to the channel. So if you want to see more content like that and you didn't subscribe at the beginning, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. If you want to see the Who is Helm Hammerhand video, go ahead and click in the upper right hand corner. If you want to see the Road to Shadow of War series, which gets you all caught up on the story of Shadow of Mordor in this alternate timeline, really alternate universe in a way, click in the upper left hand corner. In the lower right, you'll be seeing a series which is XCOM 2 War of the Chosen. It's also a popular channel on this, or popular series on the channel, which I'm enjoying doing as well. So go ahead and click on one of those, and until next time, guys, Jig Hardy.